Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6th Round Post-Fight Show with me, Zane Simon. I'm joined once again this week by Dayne Fox. We are here to talk about UFC Singapore, UFC Fight Night, Maia vs. Askren. Went down early Saturday morning for those of us in the States, later in the day Saturday for those elsewhere in the world. But I think exactly what I'd kind of hoped for out of this card, honestly, which was something really fun and great to wake up to.
Yeah, I would say solid is the optimal word.
Yeah,
there were no fights that were necessarily barn burners. A few highlights here and there, nothing that is going to jump out on anybody's Twitter feed immediately. But there weren't any bad fights either.
Exactly. Like, it's the kind of thing that you wake up. You know, if you're like me, I woke up, I didn't turn my phone on, I didn't get on Twitter, I didn't get on Facebook, I didn't get on anything. I just went straight to ESPN Plus, watched the replay, and watched it through. And it's just like, I get to have a cup of coffee, I'm doing this I can skip all the filler for every fight. So I'm only watching the fights themselves, and it was a really reasonably entertaining card to watch at your own pace, capped off by a really remarkable performance from Demian Maia.
At 41 years old, it's amazing that Maia can still be as efficient as he is. We talk about 41-year-old heavyweights remaining effective, but Maia's not a heavyweight. He's a welterweight. He's doing it in a division where there's guys who have been aged out a half a decade before his age. And he's honestly, his grappling was as sharp as it's ever been in this contest against Askren.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could even say it looked sharper than it's looked even in a long time, even in dominating sub wins. You know, somebody else pointed out to me as I was talking about this fight after the fact that, like, it's, you know, you can't remember the last time I've seen Maia hit that many different sweeps. He's always gone for that single leg sweep that he loves, but like, hitting an omoplata and all that other, like, you know, the sweeps that led to the submission and all that, like, it was an incredibly crafty guard work from Maia.
Yeah, my favorite one was actually in the first round where he started out with like it was like a funky armbar type deal. Yeah. And that one really caught me by surprise because when you were talking with Connor on the Vivi this week, you know, you were talking about how it's just always that single. So I had that exactly in mind, and he mixed it up. He really did a bunch of different things. It was a beautiful performance,
and it was great because they were exactly the kind of sweeps that Askren couldn't sprawl out.
Yep.
You know, the sweeps, like the single leg sweep, the problem with it is you're sitting up to get in on somebody's hip. If you've got a really good wrestler, and this has happened to Maia multiple times in the past, their hips are strong enough and they can get them back flat enough that they'll just sprawl out that sweep. But you're going for an omoplata, you're going for a Kimura sweep, you're going for some of these other things that Maia hit in this fight. You can't sprawl those out. You have to roll through them. And it made for this stellar performance. I was just looking at the stats or at his record recently, and this is following this, and this is the first fighter with a serious collegiate wrestling pedigree that Maia has beat since John Fitch back in 2013.
Yeah, because lately all of his contests with serious wrestlers, he's been coming out on the wrong end of things.
Yep. Shields, Woodley, Covington, Usman.
Yep.
You have to go all the way back to that John Fitch win and the Rick Story win to find fighters who had, you know, who wrestled well in college, who Demian Maia has beat. So it really does feel like, even if Askren didn't feel like an insurmountable task for Demian Maia, this really did feel like a fantastic win for him. I was at the start of the third round. I was looking at it. I'm watching Maia. He's looking like he's tired. Looks like he's clearly out kickboxed Ben Askren for each of the two rounds before it. But it looked like the pace was wearing on him,
as it usually does.
Yeah. he's sweaty. His hair's kind of lanky. He looks flat-footed. He's all marked up in his face, and Askren is not, he's kind of pawing out there with these tiny little strikes, but they're these tiny little arm strikes that, like we've seen with Colby Covington, you can throw like 800 of them. They don't make you that tired.
Yeah, they don't have a hell of a lot of oomph behind him, because Askren was landing that uppercut time and again, but Maia never looked rattled by any of those strikes. He was just tired.
It just looks like it looked like the kind of fight where it's like, okay, here's where the momentum shifts. And as the momentum shifts, it's more likely to shift in Askren's favor. And then he hits that takedown, and Maia swept him instantly, stayed on top, found his back, found the choke. I was over the moon. Wonderful.
Yeah. No, I try to keep bias out of my writings and even on the podcast, but it's so hard not to root for Maia. The guy is one of the ultimate good guys in the sport. He talks about the ideal win for him is to get somebody to tap with as little punishment dealt out as possible. Just he's a good dude. He
is, and it doesn't hurt either that. I don't, while Ben Askren seems like a nice enough guy, I'm sure in person, and he's never done anything terrible or anything. He's a total edgelord, and seeing that kind of personality get put in their place, especially by somebody as nice as Demian Maia, it really had that extra note of drama where it's like, oh, okay, that was just a little more satisfying.
Yeah. I will give Askren credit, though. He had been undefeated in his career up through the Masvidal fight, but he has handled both of these losses with the utmost class. Yeah.
No, it's definitely, you say what you want about him, but the dude, it's not like, he doesn't have the false confidence of a bully who's just sort of like lost and swinging at people and trying to, claim away his losses after he loses. He's got a good head on his shoulders for that kind of stuff.
Does.
So
yeah.
Still, like it just that really left me on such a high for this. Like I say, it was a great thing to wake up, watch this, and get to that point and be like, oh man, that was just. That made my whole morning.
So
for that, however,
I was going to say really quick, Maia's talking about the idea of maybe having a couple of grappling friendly contests before he calls it a career. I think he said 2 more fights.
Yep.
He called out Diego Sanchez.
Please no.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I get why he made the call out, because a lot of fighters, they don't pay that much attention to who's fighting around them. They don't pay that much attention to the UFC. They're not out there like watching every card, paying it. There a lot of them are kind of like casual fans. They're like, oh yeah, I caught a couple fights a couple cards ago. I don't really remember any of the people on it. Whatever.
Yeah.
So I think for him, it's probably just that Sanchez is very much a name. Never mind that he absolutely got worked by Michael Chiesa last fight.
Yeah, if he wants to do a grappling-friendly contest, Chiesa is a good option, or Gilbert Burns, I think, would be a fun one, too.
That's what springs to my mind, honestly. A fight against Gilbert Burns seems like a great way for Maia, as he's going toward late in his career, going towards retirement, pass the torch a little,
Yeah, and one that I was trying to figure out another names, and this one I think kind of comes out of left field, but I think would make a lot of sense. Claudio Silva.
Oh yeah, that also. Those would be Claudio Silva, Gilbert Burns, Michael Chiesa. Any of those fights, especially somebody like Claudio Silva, even more than maybe Chiesa or Burns, just because he's had such a foreshortened UFC career due to injuries. That he's like, he's in his mid 30s now, and he's had very few fights, but he's one of the most dangerous, exciting grapplers in the sport, and he needs to run. Like, if he's going to make any kind of run, it has to happen right now.
That was my thoughts as well. That's why I was like, I know that, a lot of casual fans aren't going to recognize the name, but to me, it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah, any of those options certainly make a lot more sense than Diego Sanchez.
Yeah.
Before that, lightweight bout, Stevie Ray, Michael Johnson. Now, I'm not going to say Michael Johnson got robbed. He had a terrible last half of the third round.
Yeah.
I was not surprised. One judge gave Ray a 10-8 in that round.
Yep.
However, I was writing up my post-fight editorial as I was watching the bouts, and I start talking about Michael Johnson's next fight as a winner off of this. And then the scores got read. And even Johnson, like, there were 29-28, 29-28, 28-28. He's like, oh, yeah, that hurts a little, but I got those 29-28s. And then they said Stevie Ray. I was a little surprised. Now, statistically, the first round was dead even. Ray started it really hot, looking great with some kicks and some hard counters.
Yep.
But by the end of the round, it felt like Johnson had really found his timing and his range and was picking him off. And then, of course, the second round was a clear sweep. Nobody would have given it to anybody other than Michael Johnson. But what did you think about that bout by the end of it? Where did you score it?
I had it 28-28. The second round was clearly Johnson.
Yep.
I can see people giving it to Ray, but I was with you. I gave the first round to Johnson as well because I thought that he found his groove. He was working the body really well, did that throughout the second round. And the third round, I can see it going either 10-8 or 10-9 because Johnson did nothing effective for that last half. He just kept a hand to his face to try to prevent as much damage as possible. I mean, I guess that's intelligent defense to a certain degree, but the other reason why I can see it be a 10-9 is that first half of the round was competitive, and you could say that Johnson was winning it up to that up before the takedown.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of thing where, like, I can see either argument. A draw would have been fine. I had Johnson winning it 29-28. I didn't think that Ray would get 10-8s from enough judges, and he didn't. But you go back and you statistically look at round one, and Johnson landed 27 of 59 significant strikes to Ray's 24 of 55. 25 of 56, so you have 27 to 25 strikes total, and that really is a razor thin margin. I can't say that Johnson got robbed. I'm just a little surprised that decision didn't go his way.
It's not a robbery by any means.
Yeah.
It's a close fight. It could have gone either way. For me, I believe that judges have long undervalued body shots from a distance. They'll take into account some brutal knees in the clinch and stuff like that, but when they're at boxing range and they're going after the body, judges tend to not score that very high, and not just judges, viewers as well.
Yeah, it's true. And in general too, I find that MMA scoring tends to break down a lot when you just get like two fighters in a fairly high output striking battle that's back and forth. You get a lot of wild scores and those kinds of things where judges are like, oh, well, I think those 3 punches that guy landed harder. And it's like, yeah, but he got outstruck 2-1 and you're giving them a round. You can't draw those lines. Or sometimes it feels like they draw weird lines. But either way, you can't, at the end of the day, the judge's decision really does come down to Michael Johnson having the worst third round possible, the worst last half of a third round possible.
Oh, and he totally could have gotten out of that. On the immediate takedown, there was an opportunity for him to just explode back up, get to his feet, and avoid that whole situation altogether where Ray's just pounding on his face on the mat.
Yeah.
But he immediately goes to cover up to stop any sort of blows that Ray might land on him, and it results in Ray getting a better position to continue to punish him. So at the end of it, I almost feel like, okay, Johnson kind of deserves it because that was a massive brain fart, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, like, he can argue with the judges all he wants, but at the end of the day, the performance that allowed him to be in that position was all down to him.
Yep.
And it's it's such a Michael Johnson way to lose a fight too. Just looking great, looking in total control, and then something happens and all of it melts.
This is par for the course with him. He did this with Josh Emmett. He looked great the first round with Justin Gaethje. He looked great the first round with Nate Diaz. He even going back to Reza Madadi. This is something that's a theme with Johnson's career, and he's on the downside of his career. I see no reason why it's going to fix itself at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely whether it's the downside or the plateau of his prime. It certainly doesn't seem like he's in a place where, even if he's only 33, you'd be pretty hard pressed to think he's about to just develop a whole bunch of new skills to complement his game as it stands at the moment.
Well, he's 33, but he's been fighting close to 12 years, and almost a decade of that is in the UFC. So he's taken some heavy damage in there. I mean, think about that Khabib fight alone.
Oh, I'm not saying that the miles aren't there. I'm just saying that we haven't yet seen him have a clear step back athletically, where it's just like Michael Johnson doesn't look like Michael Johnson anymore. No, he looks like the dude who lost to Beneil Dariush still, Sure. Like the athlete still looks pretty similar. It's just that, the dude knows how to build a snowman on the rim of a volcano. It's always just, it's successful until like that one burst just destroys the whole thing.
Yeah.
That brings us to a lightweight bout. Beneil Dariush, Frank Camacho, and just a rough fight for my man Frank. I'm a huge Frank Camacho fan. I had my serious doubts that he could stay away from Dariush's clinch and grappling game, but also Dariush came out just hot. He gave all the credit in the world afterward. He's like, oh, Frank Camacho's a tough dude. He's an elite fighter. No, he's going to do great things. It's just like, yeah, you can say that, but you also did just go out and totally stomp him with no compunction at all. Like, not a moment's hesitation to just going out there and putting hands on him.
Yeah, but Camacho offered no resistance. None.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say it's more a tribute to how awesome Dariush looked than Camacho being a tomato can, because Camacho isn't.
No, yeah, no, Camacho.
He's tough as hell. But that it could also be argued that was the best that Dariush has looked through his career, because even before he took Camacho down and submitted him, he was piecing him up on the feet.
Yeah. He looked confident. He looked aggressive. He was throwing long shots. He was keeping Camacho at the outside of his range, and then he closed him down, took him down, and subbed him out. And that choke was nasty because it wasn't under the chin.
No.
But you could see as he's closing and squeezing on that, just like all the muscle of his forearm and bicep just sort of molding and smushing around Camacho's face tighter and tighter. Looked miserable.
Painful as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to jump back in there pretty quick, too. He said that he's getting married in February, so he says he wants to get back in there.
Yep. And it honestly, at this point, with a 3-fight winning streak on his hands, I know he had that rough loss to Hernandez in 2018 and that loss to Edson Barboza, and even the draw against Devin Dunham. They were all kind of like things that stepped him way back from the top 15 for a minute.
Yep.
But now with a 3-fight win streak on his hands, like, it's time to throw him back up right at the edges. Put him in there against somebody like Islam Makhachev, or, maybe even like Mark Diakese or Nasrat Haqparast, guys who are all themselves knocking on the door of trying to become top 10 fighters.
Exactly. Because there's a lot. Those that are in the rankings are all pretty much busy right now.
Yeah.
So if he wants to get back in there before he gets married, he's going to have to take another fight against somebody who's on the fringes, kind of the same situation like he is. Haqparast was one of those that I was thinking of as well. Sarukian.
Like Haqparast is Dariush 2.0 in some ways.
And Sarukian was another one that I thought might be fun. maybe even trying to reschedule Drakkar Klose. I will admit, though, before he was saying that he wanted to fight again really soon, I was like, ooh, let's get him in there with Du Bronx, but he fights in November, so I don't think he's would be ready to fight again before February.
Yeah, I mean, I also just can never think of like booking somebody who's already got a fight going. It's always just like, well, they might get injured, they might lose. Charles Oliveira, he looks fantastic lately, but he's no stranger to weird losses.
Yeah, he's Charles Oliveira. That's the best way to put it.
Still, great win for Dariush, and one that, like I say, should put him right back into that spot he held for a long time of being like a top 15, that borderline of the top 10 kind of fighter.
Oh, at one point, he was knocking on the door of top 5.
Yeah. So, great win for him. Puts him back as kind of a gatekeeper to the elite.
Yep, and it should serve as notice that the UFC should not put Camacho against people best known for their ground game. Let's put him in there with people who want to stand and bang with him.
Yeah, that might be a thing to do. That brings us to a heavyweight bout. Ciryl Gane versus Dontale Mayes, and Gane looked fantastic.
I was a little bit hesitant to jump on the Gane bandwagon because there was a lot of hype coming in. He's a training partner of Francis Ngannou, and it's like, okay, that alone does not make him awesome. But what he's done in these last 2 contests, I'm totally on board. I think Gane looks like a legit heavyweight prospect.
He looks like the kind of fighter who I can't say how successful he's going to be against the top 5, but he looks like the kind of fighter who will storm up that division in a hurry, much like Ngannou did.
Yep.
And then just be kind of an established top shelf action fighter for heavyweight for a long time.
Yeah. And what's even scarier about this, he, came in with a reputation as a striker. He has maintained that reputation because he just brutalized Mayes on the feet. But both of his wins have come by submission.
Yep.
Granted, those, nobody's going to say that Dontale Mayes or Rafael Pessoa have great ground games, but, it's just showing that he at least has something on that, on the ground that, he's not completely inexperienced there.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a part of that camp that Ngannou came out of as well that likes to push like funky sub ground game as a kind of like bridge of wrestling, which can, it's one of those things where like I remember going into the Stipe Miocic fight for Ngannou, he's like, oh, he might be able to take me down, but can he handle my ground game? It's one of those things that like it can get you in serious trouble, but he looks like a much more comfortable wrestler than Ngannou has ever tried to be or wanted to be. Yeah. And
I want to give a little bit of shade towards Mayes. He actually looked more comfortable in there than when he, at least at the early stages of the contest, than when he first appeared on the Contender Series.
Oh, yeah.
I think that he's developing into a solid prospect himself, but Gane's just a freight train. If this didn't wreck Mayes mentally, he could still end up being a nice piece in the heavyweight division for a while.
He's big, he's powerful, and he's clearly tough as hell.
Yeah.
And those 3, and he seems fast too. And those 3 things together will keep you at heavyweight for a long time. There just aren't that many heavyweights who Gane has like head movement in the pocket. He can do things like command distance and throw a variety of strikes. At heavyweight, that's just kind of like a huge, huge talent separator between the bottom 50 and the top 10 of that division.
Yeah.
And so, for a fighter like Mayes, just because you run into that doesn't mean that you're going to, you can't turn around and fight Daniel Spitz 10 times and put together a really pretty record.
I compared it to, in my article, The Winners and Losers, I compared it to Ngannou and Blades the first time they met. 2 awesome prospects, one of them clearly ahead of their development, ahead of the other. But that, and Blades got pieced up in that fight. He got beat up bad. But that does not mean that Blades was a crap prospect, because obviously at this point, Blades is he's one of the top heavyweights.
And as we've also seen, it turns out that Ngannou was just a ferociously bad matchup for Curtis Blades.
Yes. Now, I'm also not comparing Mays to Blades by any means, but I think that he's proven that he can be a nice player.
Yeah, no, it's not having the toughness to fight that long at heavyweight and take those kinds of shots and being fast enough to deliver and powerful enough to deliver your own good offense in bursts. It'll be enough to get him other wins. It's also enough, it's enough looking at that and that kind of performance from Gane to just be like, okay, yeah, no, this kid's got something serious to him. And, obviously he could run up and fight somebody like, Oleinik or Abdurakhimov or something like that before, without any trouble, or, kind of tread water in his own space and take on somebody like Sergey Pavlovich or something like that. But if you're Gane and you want to, really capitalize right now, you got to be looking at Sergey Spivak and just being like, man,
oh hell yeah,
totally beat that dude and grab a ranking spot immediately.
Yeah, because I think Spivak got lucky just to have a fortunate matchup with Tuivasa. Yeah. He's still incredibly green himself. So if Gane can make a beeline towards him, yeah. A lot of fighters, better performing heavyweights at the bottom of this card, or at the bottom of the UFC, have got to be looking at Spivak as like, this is a gateway to instant success. Totally.
That brings us to a welterweight bout. Muslim Salikhov, Laureano Staropoli, and a really fun fight and a great performance from Salikhov.
Yeah, in many ways, I think the fact that he was able to make this go to decision and still pick up the win does more to boost his stock than had he starched Staropoli in the first or second, because he proved that he can go the distance and still pull out a decision. Because there were a lot of people I noticed that were saying, if it goes the distance, this fight's Staropoli, and didn't turn out to be true.
Yeah, I mean, Staropoli, he even losing and getting outstruck by 20 significant strikes, he still outthrew Salikhov across 3 rounds. He throws a ton of volume, which is why a lot of people, even myself included, even though I picked Salikhov, I thought, it's like, it is a problem. Like, Staropoli's volume is a concern, and Salikhov has never really seemed like a great volume striker. It was just kind of my feeling that Salikhov's improved footwork and his improved dedication to creating pressure counters would do enough to keep Staropoli off balance. And the fact that Staropoli's, and this fight showed it again, really inaccurate. Just wildly inaccurate with his volume. Meant that Salikhov would have a lot of opportunities to land in return. And that ended up being the case.
Yeah. Salikhov made his volume count, whereas Staropoli was just, he was throwing it out there. None of, like in the first 2 rounds, very few of them came anywhere close to landing on Salikhov, and Salikhov just picked his spots, hurt Staropoli badly at one point in the second. I thought he was going to get the finish, but he pulled back when he realized it wasn't going to come, which allowed him to have enough energy to go the distance.
Yeah, it's a very good win for Salikhov. It shows his development from the guy who would just either kind of stand there and watch you or one-shot kill you, into somebody who can create enough offense round to round that he's clearly winning while still setting up those kinds of single shots that are a huge danger.
Yep.
And for a guy as creative as Salikhov, that makes him a real player at welterweight. I kind of feel like he needs some bigger wins. I know he called out Li Jinglong, and he might get that fight, honestly, just because he does have a fan base in China where he did a lot of kickboxing. But it doesn't feel like, at the moment, it just doesn't feel like Salikhov has put himself, like the wins he's had so far do not feel like they put him on track for a fighter like Jing Liang, who really should be in the top 15 right now, fighting elite competition.
Yeah. That's the biggest problem that I have with that. It's not that I don't like the idea of the contest with Jing Liang. Yeah. It's just I'd rather see Jing Liang get a chance at a more established opponent. It's hard to say otherwise what to do with Salikhov.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Dalby. I don't know.
Dalby or like Bilal Muhammad, maybe.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, something like that. It's too bad that it took so long for Salikhov to find his way to the UFC. You know, he's doing a lot of other stuff. He's doing a lot of kickboxing mixed in with his MMA career. He kept up with some Wushu Sanda competitions throughout his MMA career, things like that. That I think probably he wanted that freedom of a smaller organizations that would let him do that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
But, you know, for a guy now hitting the UFC and looking really composed and like his game's even improved, it's just like, man, but you're already 35.
Yeah.
And that bumps me out. That brings us to the prelims and a women's strawweight bout. Randa Markos, Ashley Yoder, and this fight, I'll admit, this fight kind of surprised me. Markos didn't exactly get totally out-grappled, but Yoder was definitely generally beating her there for long stretches of the fight.
Yep.
And then Markos just absolutely lit her up standing. And I know that Yoder's stand-up game hasn't ever been like her strong focus, but Markos has had some trouble creating that kind of consistent offense standing. So I was a little surprised to see that be the really definitive point where Markos took over and won this fight.
Markos, I mean, as her record indicates, she's like the queen of inconsistency.
Mm-hmm. It's always weird because she's inconsistent about what she's inconsistent about.
Yeah. Like last time against Claudia Gadelha, Gadelha is known for slowing down significantly towards the end of a contest, and for some reason Markos didn't put the pedal to the metal, and Gadelha squeaked out a decision. This time, Markos had no problem being aggressive, which I've always felt was where she's at her best. Mm-hmm. At least on the feet. Well, no, she was aggressive on the ground too. Like she had that weird reverse triangle that she went for in the first round.
Yeah, she was like, she actually got out of grappling spots and then put punishment on Yoder afterward. It was just that she would get into bad spots to start where Yoder would be able to control her for large amounts of time.
Exactly. But, she, I saw her interview after the fight. She was saying that she herself was surprised how much success Yoder was having on the ground. So she said, all right, the last 2 rounds, I'm just going to stand and bang with her. And that proved to be enough for her to get the nod on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, so strong win for her. Keeps her as a gatekeeper to the top, to the elite in that division, still very firmly. She's the woman you have to beat if you want to face the better people in that division. And it might even push her back into a top 15 kind of bout that she may just go out and lose again immediately because that's just what she does. I don't know. I think it'd be fun to see her face Amanda Ribas next, honestly. Like keep that spot as gatekeeper going. See if you can push another fighter looking to make a run back and get a little momentum going. And if not, then Ribas, we know is more than just a person who could beat Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah, no, I was thinking Yan Jianan, but I think I actually like the Ribas one better.
Yeah, I mean, Yan Jianan would be great too. It's just that, she's injured at the moment, I believe. So
yeah, no, she was actually scheduled for this card. Markos replaced her for this.
Yeah. So I would absolutely say Yan Jianan as well if she were healthy. Mm-hmm. That brings us to a lightweight bout. Rafael, damn you Brazilians. Spoiled Rafael for me forever. Rafael Fiziev versus Alex White. And this is exactly the fight that Fiziev needed after a terrible debut. He needed to be able to go out there and really just show his quality. And he did. Looked a mile ahead of Alex White for most of this fight.
Yeah. Did you I don't know how much attention you were paying to the audio side of this contest, but did you hear the impact on some of those shots that Fiziev was landing on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, that guy can strike. I mean, credit to White for having the chin that he does, because, damn, he took some serious lumber on this one. Fiziev showed why he's a highly respected coach. It's Tiger Muay Thai that he's at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And to his credit, he even showed that he's got a little bit of a ground game. Like, White kept trying to score the takedowns. Fiziev showed a nice sprawl. He's better rounded than what I thought. I thought he was largely a striking specialist based on what I'd seen in his previous film.
Yeah, no, I think he's got the ability to hang and keep the fight where he wants it well enough. I think the biggest concern is honestly just that he still has a tendency, as we've seen with a lot of Muay Thai fighters, and we're getting a lot more of them coming to the UFC, people with some serious pedigrees and quality.
Yep.
That they're very willing to stand right in the pocket and depend on nuanced defense to see them through exchanges, where you get a lot of MMA fighters who come up and they have a tendency to be wild, but to throw a lot of volume, and they can catch people out. They can land hard shots that fighters don't expect. So you get some of these really polished Muay Thai fighters. You get your Hakeem Dawodu's, you get your Rafael Fizievs, you even get your Loma Lookboonmees further down the card. And they're playing these games of inches against people who are really like, oh, I might miss by a foot, but I'm still throwing it. And they still eat more shots than you'd maybe want to see out of somebody who's got that clear of a technical advantage, where, by the end of the fight, White actually outlanded Rafael Fiziev.
But a lot of, they didn't have nearly the impact that Fiziev.
No. I'm not like, that's what I'm saying, is it's not a question of like, I don't feel like Fiziev even lost a round necessarily.
Yep.
But it's just a question of like, as we've seen with Fiziev already and Hakeem Dawodu already, there are some dudes who will just knock you out if you give them that 1 inch that they needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not a major concern. It's going to mean a lot of great action fights for these fighters. They're going to be fun, but it is a minor concern as, they keep taking action bouts and keep facing incredibly tough dudes who will stay in there with them the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
And the UFC is full of those kinds of fighters.
Oh, no shortage.
Yeah. For that, and man, this was my favorite fight on the card, unquestionably. Just loved every second of it. Two fighters I really, really enjoy watching, putting on, honestly, almost a perfect fight. And that's Movsar Evloev, Enrique Barzola. And this fight just ruled. It was so good.
Yeah, Evloev walked out with the win, which I do believe he deserved.
Yeah.
But I do not think that Barzola comes out looking worse for wear in this whatsoever.
No. No.
He came storming back over the second half of the contest because, that dang Peruvian's he's got an endless gas tank. I mean, son of a bitch. Does. Because Evloev was laying it on him early, and then you kind of see him slow down, and Barzola took every opportunity that he had to lay some leather on him. It wasn't enough in the end, but bravo to both of them. It was. I agree with you. I was actually kind of surprised this one didn't win fight of the night.
Yeah, I mean, they threw 483 strikes between the two of them. Evloev throwing 244 to Barzola's 239, but Barzola landing just a few more. And I would still, I still say, like you, that Evloev deserved the win. He landed a lot more of the cleaner, harder shots all throughout the fight.
Yes.
But Barzola is just tough as hell and will not stop for anyone. And it's a fun. It was great to see, like, you know, Evloev. The biggest reason I picked Evloev, honestly, here was just that Barzola, as he's unfortunate, I feel bad saying unfortunately because this was such a fun fight and it was made fun in part for this reason, is that over time Barzola is becoming more, it seems clear he's becoming more and more somebody who wants to be a boxer.
Yes.
And as he does that and gets away from the unstoppable wrestling game that brought him here, it meant that all fight Evloev was going to be the one who gets to start all the shots, who gets to start all the wrestling exchanges. And for a wrestler as good as Evloev, that always meant that he'd have the advantage. Yeah. And he did. Yeah, he would always start with the wrestling advantage, even if Barzola couldn't be held down.
Throw in the fact, too, that, you know, Barzola, he doesn't have a hell of a lot of power.
No.
So when Evloev came out storming out of the gate, you know, because he came out really strong, he still had plenty of energy. And those shots that he landed, you know, there were a couple of them that you could tell that rocked Barzola, leaving no question as to who was taking those first 2 rounds.
Yep. Yeah, it's just, you know, Barzola, he's a fantastic fighter. He's an incredibly good scrambler, a very fun offensive wrestler, a good defensive wrestler, even getting taken down 4 times here. Like, those are 4 of the only takedowns Barzola has ever given up, and he didn't give up a minute of top control. But he's really having to develop as a technical kickboxer. He's mostly surviving on toughness and volume. And it's going to be rough for him if he's going to go out there and try to strike with everyone.
Yeah. I think that he, you know, like you said, he fell in love with the idea of becoming a boxer. Like, it used to be that he would win on the strength of his ferociousness with his takedowns, and as far as his volume, it would all come on the low kicks. Yep. And he didn't completely abandon the low kicks in this contest, but, you know, I think that he would be well served to try to do a better job of mixing those in with his boxing, because when he stepped into the pocket for the early exchanges, Evloev was having his way with him. Yeah.
And, you know, it was a great fight. It showed off the quality of both men. It is all, you know, shows off entirely for me why I've been hyped on Evloev since the moment I first caught tape of him.
Yep.
And he looks like a incredibly composed, developing, aggressive striker with a unstoppable wrestling game behind him. And Barzola shows that he's a top flight action fighter at 145 pounds. I just hope that the style he's cultivating doesn't carry him away from ever becoming as good, from getting as good a fights as he deserves, you know? Because right now it just feels like the UFC is kind of using him to troll the bottom of 145, when it's like, really, you should be fighting like Chaz Skelly or Andre Feely or, you know, some of these other guys that are knocking on the door of the top 15. So,
yeah. They gave him Kevin Aguilar.
Yeah.
You know, as Aguilar was knocking on the door of the rankings himself. And, you know, he didn't embarrass himself against Aguilar either. That was a close contest. So, I don't know.
But that really showed, like, that was the moment I realized how much Barzola is trying to become a boxer.
Yeah.
He really just went out there and tried to have a boxing match with Kevin Aguilar, and he did well late. By the end of it, he was getting his licks in. But you can see how much he's developed, how much work that game has to have done to it, just by how long it took him to get into that fight.
And you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say that was the fight where he really showed that he's trying to become a boxer, just like you said. So, yeah, I mean, I think that he can go further than what he's at by using that style, but he's still got to sharpen it up at this point.
Yeah, and it just maybe as he's sharpening it up, he might start taking, you know, enough of the kind of losses that just make the UFC be like, you know, we're not that interested.
Yeah.
So,
hope not.
I hope not too, because he's a thrilling fighter to watch, and this was a fantastic fight. If you missed all the card, I mean, honestly, a lot of these fights were great, and you should go back and watch most of them. But this was, to me, the highlight of just like a nonstop fun fight.
Agreed.
For that, Sergey Pavlovich beat Maurice Greene, and I kind of feel like this is one of those fights. Like, I feel like this looked the way the fight was going to look.
Yeah.
Pavlovich was on the way to implementing the kind of offense that Greene was going to have trouble with all night. I do think the stoppage was kind of garbage, though.
Yeah. Greene was he was defending himself intelligently. You got to look at the eyes, and his eyes appeared to be clear in my opinion as well. And yeah, he given his long limbs, I think he might have been able to kick Pavlovich away and force a stand up to continue going. And you're probably right. Pavlovich probably would have starched him at some point sooner or later, but the guy was still there.
Yeah, you can't look at the Gane Mays fight later, where like the end of the second round,
Saved by the Bell.
Gane, well, he wasn't though. Gane,
in the first round?
What was it? Was it the first round where he hit the flying knee?
First round, yeah.
Okay, end of the first round. He wasn't saved by the bell. He was done. Like, he got crushed by that knee and dropped. He was not defending himself in the lead up. He was eating shots. Like, there's no reason Herb Dean couldn't have stepped in, but he didn't.
Agreed.
And Mays cleared up and came back and fought the rest of the way through it, even losing. And like where Greene was with Pavlovich, he was nowhere near as put out as Mays was in that moment.
I totally agree with you. When I said Saved by the Bell, I meant that I totally agree. They should have stopped it earlier. I was kind of wondering why they didn't, but it sucks for Greene. I found it funny in the broadcast. They mentioned that if he had won the contest with Pavlovich, he would have been tied with the longest winning streak in heavyweight, which is totally heavyweight.
Yeah, that's way too much the way this division is.
But good win for Pavlovich. I mean,
yeah,
he's very stiff. His muscular build is going to limit some of what he can do effectively in there, like with his combinations and stuff like that. But the he's a plow horse. He just goes in there, he outmuscles them, and Greene's strikes were basically just bouncing off of him as he plowed forward, and the guy's brutal.
And the thing is that he's starting to throw combinations. He's starting to throw 2 and 3 punches at a time, when in the past he used to just sit back and try to throw one big strike at a time.
True. And
even if those combinations are never super pretty and smooth, even if he's never the most fluid striker out there, at 6'3" with an 84-inch reach, like, just putting 2 or 3 strikes at a time out there is going to cause a lot of trouble for a lot of people with that kind of reach at that height, where you're not you're not Greene, you're not Stefan Struve, you're not this stilt whose head is way up on a pole as you're trying to fend people off. He can absolutely, like, that kind of build is just made for, like, being, he's got that kind of Walt Harris build where you can kind of crouch low and just fire these laser shots from range that are going to trouble people.
Yeah. Not quite as explosive as Harris, but he might be pound for pound stronger. But
and he's got that. Unlike Harris, he's got a really deep Greco-Roman wrestling background to make it so that when people do close down his reach, he's going to be the physically and more technically strong fighter in the clinch.
Yeah, if he's very similar to Gane, he should be calling up Mick Maynard or Sean Shelby, whichever one it is, and saying that he wants Spivak.
Yeah, I honestly think he should probably be fighting the Brazilian
Sakai,
Augusto Sakai. That'd be a hell of a fight.
Unstoppable force and movable object type deal, because both of them are big boys.
Yeah, both of them are big. Both of them have sharpened up their boxing, and both of them seem tough. And it would be like, I don't want either of them to lose as legit heavyweight prospects, but it would be a great fight for like the guy who wins that is a top 10 heavyweight right now,
Well, that's the thing is that with heavyweight, like there's the top 10 and then the cliff just drops off after that so suddenly. It's hard to build up these prospects into the top 10 in a progressive way. It's just you're beating up on these, I don't want to call them cans, but fighters that are clearly on a different level. And then all of a sudden you jump into the 10 and damn.
Yeah. So Pavlovich looks great though. And for Greene, he, fortunately for him, I think this is a bad loss. It sucks, but he's on a good run of success and he can argue to his dying day that he wasn't out and that it was stopped too early and return fully confident for his next bout that he should still be unbeaten in the octagon. And that's important for a fighter looking to progress, honestly.
Yeah, and he's not as advanced into his career as Pavlovich is either. Yeah. So in a way, I between the two, I would rather have Greene lose so that he can get a little bit more time to marinate.
Yeah. Women's strawweight bout before that, Loma Lookboonmee, Alexandra Albu, and all credit to Albu. This is easily the best she has ever looked in any fight. No credit to her at all. She could not keep from grabbing Lookboonmee at all times because it was clear from like the first two strikes that hit her. She was like, oh my God, I've never faced anybody this good. Panic mode immediately. And it took a long time for her to clear out enough of the panic to start landing some good shots on Lookboonmee late, but not enough to steer a decision away from a fighter that's just clearly way more technical than her.
Yeah, it was obvious that Albu subscribes to the theory of if you ain't cheating, you aren't trying, because that first round, it was hard to find a moment where she wasn't grabbing some item of clothing on Lookboonmee. She ripped Lookboonmee's shirt early, like within seconds, continued to grab at it. There was another period of time later where she was grabbing the shorts. And despite all of the cheating, Lookboonmee was still getting the better of the exchanges in the clinch. I mean, you could tell Albu had a strength advantage, but Lookboonmee's technique was far superior, and it could be argued that Lookboonmee took every round. I was actually surprised it went to split.
Yeah, no, the split was trash. There's no reason that should have been a split. Even, that's one of those fights where just statistically alone, there's zero reason that should be a split. You had Lookboonmee outlanding Albu handily in every round, doubling up on her in the first round. And Albu had one takedown. There are no knockdowns. She clipped Lookboonmee with some hard shots late. Like I say, this is honestly the best Albu has ever looked, cheating and all. She looked like she was composed. Well, she didn't look composed. She looked like she knew what kind of fight she wanted, which has never really been the case in the past. It's just that, she's kind of been rushed. She got rushed into the UFC. She had one fight and got signed to a UFC contract and has been fighting once per year or 2 years ever since.
I think she was signed all the way back in 2013 because she was scheduled to fight as a bantamweight originally, which is shocking considering she's not large for a strawweight, to be honest. Yeah. But like you said, she knew what she wanted to do. She realized Lookboonmee was moving up from atomweight, so she probably believed that despite Lookboonmee's Muay Thai experience, that she'd be able to outmuscle her in the clinch. And there were times where she did get the better of the exchanges, but like I said, Lookboonmee's technique it overwhelmed her in the end, and as the fight progressed, Lookboonmee got more comfortable in there. There were a couple of times where she just kind of dropped Albu, not with a shot, but like with a trip and just kind of walked away and reset things.
Yeah, I both like that, and I do feel like it was very astute of, I believe it was, dang it, who's the second man in the booth. There's Dan and John and
Felder,
who was talking about how like she just has all these Muay Thai instincts that she needs to get rid of like throwing your opponent down and then walking away. It's like, no, jump on them, land some offense, go in there, keep doing stuff, or you know, some. So I think there were a couple other points where she had like things that just made it clear, like she's so much of the process of Muay Thai is just ingrained into her psyche. It's going to take a little while to train that out of her, but she's got a lot of technical basics in her game that there aren't many strikers at 115 pounds that can match her for clinch offense, especially, but even from like range kicking game, you know.
So I do have a question that I'm curious about. You know, they bring in somebody like Lookboonmee, and the UFC's been pushing Michelle Waterson, you know, giving her every chance to succeed. Do you think that they open up atomweight at any point in the next few years?
No. I doubt it. I can't see it. They've already got enough struggling women's divisions that they don't know quite what to do with. I doubt that they open atomweight up.
I agree, but you know, I see somebody like Lookboonmee, I see somebody like Waterson, and they could easily slide down to 105, and you know, especially with Waterson because she is somebody that they want to succeed. So
I get it. There might be the talent out there eventually, but I really doubt that the UFC is about to add that division. Honestly, I'd be a little surprised if it happened.
My thoughts is what exactly, but you know, I thought it's something it's been kicking around in my head as a possibility, and so I just wanted to see what somebody else's opinion was on it.
No, my opinion is no. That takes us to the one fight on the card that really you can absolutely skip if you missed this whole thing. Rafael Pessoa versus Jeff Hughes. And man, this fight was just bad. And like, it's kind of remarkable that Jeff Hughes went out and won a season of Tough.
No, he didn't.
Well, did he? No,
he was a Contender Series.
Oh, he was Contender Series. That's right. It was the Spanish guy who won Tough.
Yeah.
It's kind of remarkable that they brought, like, I guess it's just remarkable that they brought Jeff Hughes in off Tough because his game looks like it's only devolving in the UFC.
So if, I believe he's a training partner of Stipe.
Yep.
So that was something that he had going in his favor. Credit to the guy that he's tough as hell.
Yeah, he's tough.
But, you know, beyond that, he doesn't have much to work with. I mean, he's stout for heavyweight.
He's listed at 6'2", which I wonder if is a mistake because he seems much shorter than that.
That's what I was going to say too. I doubt the 6'2" listing is accurate, and he's not a good athlete by any means. I mean, you know, he's ideal as a regional gatekeeper to test to see if somebody wants to come into the UFC. He just doesn't have the physical attributes to find success at this level. And I mean, the fact that he lost to Pessoa should say it all. I mean,
exactly. That's the thing, is that this was really a fight set up for him to succeed, where it's like against a guy who starts fast, seems like he's probably prone to gassing, just does not really have any form to his game at all. And so you've got a guy like Hughes who's not maybe as fast, but it can be tough and just hang out and in there and keep a grind on him. And he just couldn't even start to do that. Yeah.
And it's kind of sad that, you know, Pessoa looked miles better in this contest than he did with Gane. You know, I mean, when they signed Pessoa and I start watching footage on him, I'm like, this guy's going to wash out. But here he is with a win, which says all you need to know about Hughes.
Yeah, this was a miserable fight, and just because it's not even like Pessoa didn't slow down after a round. It's just Hughes didn't ever speed up.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Hughes might have won the last round, but
no, judges didn't give it to him. I wouldn't give it to him either.
I wouldn't have either. I'm just saying that maybe you can make that argument because Pessoa really did slow down by that point. But like you said, it just wasn't a fight that was. It wasn't It wasn't the worst fight I've ever seen, but it wasn't anything that I'd recommend for anybody to watch either.
Yeah, the thing is that it's not a fight where you come away thinking like, oh yeah, well these guys, they're going somewhere. Like, I want to see both of them again, either of them again. You know, it's just like, okay, this was a bad heavyweight fight between bad heavyweights. Congratulations. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap things up. End of the day, I still can't help but leave this whole thing on a high note. Demian Maia getting that awesome win over Ben Askren. Ben Askren's UFC career, it's been a rough one now. You got that one shining win over Robbie Lawler that was controversial for a lot of people. And then the first 2 stoppage losses of his career for a guy who's already who's already retired once.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. How much, does he want to take a step back and fight guys in the welterweight division? Just like some dude? Does he want to go fight Nordine Taleb?
He's not going to fall that far, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, there's no point in him taking a step back because he's 35. Like, what do you build? You're not building him towards anything. But how many times is he going to want to face big competition and just lose and feel like he's not getting anywhere close to a title shot when clearly the belt was his whole goal?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Is Neil Magny a relevant enough name?
I kind of hope not. I don't want to see that fight. I'd like to see him fight. I'd like to see him fight Gunnar Nelson. That's what I
100% agree with you on that one. That was the one that I would say is my favorite idea. But Nelson's also lost 2 in a row himself. I think 3 of his last 4, to be brutally honest. So
yeah, I'm not saying, but like it's still it's more interesting to me than a lot of what Askren could do now.
Yeah.
I definitely just can't be thrilled enough for Demian Maia.
Agreed.
Controversy for Stevie Ray. Pulled out a win at the end. Big third round. Beneil Dariush looked great. Gane looked fantastic. Fiziev looked fantastic. Evloev looked fantastic. Cannot say enough good things about them. So, fun event.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at @TheZaneSimon. You can find Dayne on Twitter at TheDaneFox. And we will see you next week for UFC 244 Masvidal versus Diaz.